Hi, everybody. Welcome to my podcast, Dear Children, which is based on the autobiography of my father, Dr. Nazir Bhatti. This book, Dear Children, was actually published earlier this year, and today is our episode 5 for this podcast. And in this podcast today, I aim to go through some very interesting, fun, and some bittersweet memories of my dad from his young age, from almost 10 years up to around 20 years or so. And in these 5-6 chapters, he's gone through some memories which actually do for me kind of decipher some of the personality aspects he has, which have been quite obvious to us, and also leaves, hopefully for all of us, some interesting lessons. I want to start this a podcast with his conversation about his days of destitution. Even though, as we kind of learned about my father and his family, that they never were, had the luxuries or riches, but really this phase when he was around 11 years old, because and they were living in Montgomery, his father lost his job. My father kind of remembers that period as period of destitution, which according to my dad really was responsible for giving him the inferiority complex he felt at that part of his life, but also continued to impact him for a while. He basically also found that life is not very fair, got exposed to that because his father actually was let go from his role because his father's boss, was just unhappy about the food his father had arranged for him for a trip. And just at something like that, as minor, he ended up losing his job, which my father found to be very unfair. He talks about the generosity of the neighbors who helped get him and his siblings through, and even helped him procure some supplies for school and his uniform and things like that. Eventually, his father had to go through some rough time, going through a couple jobs, which were not that great. But he tried to help the family through those anyways. He talks about that little things became really important for him and his brothers at that time. And one example he gives, which I can totally relate to, is that they used to go to the market and they used to have this aura or smell of aroma, actually, of a very special dish, an exotic dish in our part of the world, and Lahore and Punjab and Montgomery, was goat liver and goat stomach. And they had never tasted those dishes there, but they eventually were able to procure some money through some very petty business they were able to do as brothers, and were able to, for the first time, really taste the flavor, which he still remembers today. And that tells me why he is so much into exotic dishes such as the liver and the stomach and so forth. So explains that. And then finally his father found a reasonably stable job in a neighboring town called Burewala, which had his father move away from the family. He also talks about that when he was at the young age of 12 years old or so, he remembered that he got struck by a teacher unfairly who used to teach them subject of general knowledge. And he said that since then he actually started hating that subject. And then my father digresses a little bit and talks about how he continues to feel that unfairness among teachers really determines the negative performance of a lot of students, even now. And he talks about how in social media you continue to see how students become victim to unfair treatment by their teachers, and how those little episodes can become defining moments for a lot of the students, who then actually get dislike for academia and learning, and end up ruining their lives. So it's really important for my father, I think, because he himself as a teacher who really, really cared about his relationship with his students, really, really felt for that situation. He also felt that sometimes as young children, students have to face unnecessary hardship like he did, because just neighboring to his school was actually a police station. And as kids, they were exposed to the cries and screams of suspects and criminals who sometimes were probably at the mercy of the police, and probably had to face some bad treatment and sometimes torture maybe. And they would hear as children those cries and screams. Just imagine what kind of a trauma that may lead for children anywhere if they're exposed to that. And then he just talks about little pleasures of life, such as traveling for summer vacation to parks and things like that, how meaningful those things became. And that kind of explains to me why my father always made sure that as his children, we were always going out somewhere on summer vacation or making trips and whatnot. Even though we could not afford lavish vacations, we were always going out and were able to be around. So that kind of explains that. My father then focuses a chapter whole on his school days and talks about how engaged he was in studies. He really took his studies very seriously. He really wanted to do well, and he did not even, as they did not even have electricity, so many times at night he actually had to study and prepare for his tests just under candlelight. And also he was blessed to have a street light just across from his house, and he often used that street light to study late. And then very interesting episode, one of his neighbors, a motherly figure, which he thought she was, actually gave him this little chore to go and tie a piece of paper wrapped in a cloth to a tree. And since he did that actually, and then when he came back, he actually fell sick after that, and he started shaking and whatnot and had high fevers. So his mother asked him about anything unusual, and he actually did share that he had actually gone and taken that piece of paper and cloth and then had tied it to the tree. His mom actually asked him to go back, and he was able to go back and bring it. And these things are amulets, or as they're called, taviz in our culture, which he believes probably led him to get sick. So again, something very supernatural. I don't know if I believe in that correlation, and my father actually never did believe in these kind of happenings, but he believes that he has no other explanation why did he get sick after he tied that. But again, something which probably kind of had some impact on his persona, something very hard to ignore actually. Then he talks about his boyhood and how a lot of his friends kind of helped him kind of survive his boyhood. He talks about visiting Lahore for the first time when he was 17 years old, and he was able to enjoy his relatives who were very kind to him, his cousins who actually helped him kind of go around and were very generous. That's where he really developed this love for visiting relatives and really feeling that you have support through them. After that, in chapter 11 and subsequently next couple chapters, he talks about his days in his college. He was very excited. He wanted to be a physician. His parents wanted to be a physician. And he talks about the love of parents for their children and how they helped them kind of go through life. And he talks about his father giving him his old bicycle and also his really new watch because they really wanted to make sure that he had the ability to be successful. He could keep an eye on the time and things like that. So he does remember those sacrifices his parents made for him, and again defines to me and shows me why he was the kind of father he was for us. Also, he talks about that in his college, he actually got distracted for a year or so and ignored his academics and actually had to pay a big price for it because he never got the merit for which was required for him to go to med school, and eventually shattered that dream for him and for his parents. In the end, which turned out to be okay because my father went on to do great things in life. But again, he talks about how important it is for teenagers his age to make sure that they keep their focus. They should enjoy their life, but again, it's very important for them to continue to follow their ambition and be very focused. And then he shares his really very fun part of his life since he was 18 and onward, after he was 18 years and onward, because he got to join government college for his bachelor's degree. And during that time, he actually got to move to Lahore from Montgomery. So he just cherishes that time when he was with his brothers Amir and Jamil, and his brothers supported him through everything, and they were able to go to restaurants and enjoy different kind of dishes and meals and just gain a lot of experiences. And again, explains to me what led to his absolute love for his brothers and their families. He also talks about subsequently that his family shifted to Lahore to join him and his brothers, which was a great blessing to have his mother and his sister kind of join him. And then in 1962, when he was around 21 years old, he actually passed his BSc bachelor examination and joined masters, and then talks about all the friends he made during his years of bachelors and masters. And these are the friends who really became his support for many years to come. And most of these friends were very dedicated to their academic ambitions and ended up being really very prominent figures in the academic and many other and the bureaucratic and other aspects of Pakistani infrastructure. And then how he continued to stay in touch with them, and how some of them unfortunately passed away recently, and how he misses them, all of them. He also talks about his first ever trip to Karachi, where he met my mom, and just was a tremendous experience for him to visit Karachi and to be at the sea and to work with his team of his other colleagues who were doing masters with him. So just a very exciting part of his life, which really brought him in his element of who he was going to be and how he was going to help the country doing well in regards of zoology and fisheries and whatnot. So very interesting for me to read all of that and try to understand how did my father go through these very, very critical years of his life, and how he was shaped into the person we found him to be. So just was very, very interesting. So, and then he just kind of talks about a lot of trips he made to other parts of the country and got exposed to and understood more about the Pakistani culture beyond where he just was born, and he not born, where he migrated to and to other states of the country. And one interesting thing which is important to mention here, that when they were graduating from almost graduating, his class went out, his master's class went out for a trip, and at the end of the trip, as they were going to separate very soon after that trip, my father actually sang this very famous song from the movie Ghungat, which was about separation and farewell, and how the girls or the females in the class actually came to him and gave him a gift of bangles after that song. And I just mentioned it because my father is a great singer, and for him to kind of talk about his passion of singing and how it kind of shows up in his life here and there was very interesting to read about. And then he just ends very strongly this chapter again talking about all his friends and how he misses them. And the last thing he talks about in this chapter 12 about one of his friends, Abdul Ghafoor, who was his neighbor while he was doing his masters. And this friend Ghafoor was into pranks, and one day he did a prank on his uncle, who was my father's neighbor, by laying down on a bed and covered in blooded bandages, which was not really blood but just color. And when his uncle came, they actually said that, hey, Ghafoor has passed away because of an accident, and his uncle went into a shock. But then he jumped out of the bed and said that, hey, I was just doing a prank, and they just laughed it off. But just a few months later, Ghafoor actually, who became a lawyer, and went to see his family for a little trip, and on his way back, they got the news that he actually got into an accident and died right on the road, covered with wounds and blood. So again, my father kind of leaves us with this thought, is there some supernatural? But again, I never saw my father believing in those kind of things, but still, he cannot fail to kind of share some of these experiences, and you can kind of make up whatever you want to make about it, but just very interesting episodes. So yeah, it's just a fun part of the book which I got to read. Some tough memories in there, but mostly really defining my father coming into his element and being successful, and really helping me understand why my father is the man, how I see him. So this was very, very interesting. So I hope you enjoyed this episode 5 of Dear Children, the autobiography of my father, Dr. Nazir Bhatti. And I will see you soon for my next episode. Thank you for tuning in.